so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I'm Alexis Alcott, the UMC Interim Program Coordinator, and we're excited to have you join us today as we celebrate 25 years of marriage celebrations in 2023. To be doing these marriage celebrations is so exciting for us, and a big part of that is our webinars that we put on every 2 weeks. And today's webinar, we're joined by Richard and Linda Eyres. Richard and Linda Eyres are New York Times #1 best-selling authors that explore the new frontier of proactive, difference-making grandparenting and the way it seems to strengthen and energize empty nest marriages. The Eyres have appeared on Oprah, Today, and virtually every national network talk show discussing their strategies for family, parenting, and life balance. Their books have sold millions and are translated into more than a dozen languages. More than 50 countries have been reached and counting with these books. We're fortunate to have them speak to us right here at home and on the webinar at the university where they met and fell in love long, long ago. Today, Richard and Linda will be discussing how to develop deeper familial connections as empty nesters, answering the questions of over 75 million grandparents in America. First question, how are they doing in their grandparenting? 2, how are they doing in their empty nest marriages? And 3, how do those two things influence and affect each other? If you have any questions, please ask them by entering your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Answering the questions will allow you to be able to talk to Linda and Richard at the end for 15 minutes during our live Q&A session after their presentation. So write down your questions and save them for the end. If you've joined us for the CEU credit today, make sure to stay until the end of the presentation. The survey needed for your credit will automatically load onto the screen, and then you'll receive an email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You may also email the Utah Marriage Commission at marriagecommission@usu.edu for your survey on this webinar. Once you've completed that survey, you'll obtain an email from the CEU credit certification from us. We'll now turn the time over to the Eyres for their presentation.
Hello, everybody. We're so glad to be with you.
We're just always glad to be among other grandparents, you know. We don't have any patience for those young parents anymore. We only want to talk to you seasoned parents who are either grandparents or about to become grandparents.
Right. And it is going to be so fun today, especially because we are Utah Staters, deep down and through and through. And I don't know how many of you that are on are affiliated with Utah State or they sponsored that. I should have asked that question, but we love Utah State.
I met this girl at Utah State. This will embarrass her, but she was the homecoming queen and everyone knew who she was. And I laid awake at night thinking, how could I get a date with her? And I won't tell you how I did. It was kind of a surreptitious way,
right?
But it all worked out, and so we are Aggies. We are true Aggies.
We are
true Aggies, and so where would we rather be than on a USU webinar?
Absolutely, we're so excited, and we're grateful to Alexis, who's coordinating this for us, and I think you can ask questions anytime if we say something on the way through, and then we will be with you at the last 15 minutes answering questions.
So here's the deal. When we talk to parents, we often, well, I'm going to save that for a minute. I'm going to say, first of all, it is so amazing that so many people we talk to who are coming up on the empty nest, their last child's about to leave home, and they'll say, we're so worried. And it's not about our kids. I mean, it is. We worry about them going away, but we're worried about ourselves because for so many years, the chemistry and the relationships and the dynamic has been, we've been parents with children. When this last one goes, it's just the two of us again. And we're just wondering how we'll do in our marriage when it's just down to the two of us. And statistics do show that that is a real pressure point for a lot of marriages. A lot of strain can come on a marriage when you become empty nesters, unless you've prepared for it.
Well, it took us a long time to empty our nest.
Yeah, that's right.
We have 9 children, 5 sons, 4 daughters. all ours genetically, and no twins, just to get the questions out of the way. But it really was so interesting because we did write a book called Empty Nest Parenting.
By the way, our youngest daughter, who was still living in our
Right.
house when we wrote the book, suggested you named that wrong. You should have called it Emptying Nest, because I'm still here.
But there is something to that. I mean, it really is interesting that it is, it takes such a long time when you have that many children. And sometimes if you have two, they're just, whoa, gone. And it's a whole different deal. But
the real crunch comes when the last one leaves, though, as far as the marriage goes.
Right, exactly. And as far as the mother goes, because that is a difficult time for so many mothers. We, some of our kids are emptying their nest and they're wondering what they're going to do next year. One of our daughters is sending her last two away next year, and they are
away to college, not sending them away or putting them away
to college. But it is really a big step, because suddenly it's just you two for a while, and you've got to really like each other in order to be together. And sometimes the kids have been so overwhelming with taking care of them that it's a whole different lifestyle, and really difficult because so many women dedicate their whole lives to their kids, and then suddenly they're gone.
We know so many couples that'll say to us, boy, the biggest struggle, these are parents with kids still in their home. How do we get a little time with each other? How do we get away from the kids long enough to continue our courtship? And we talk about going on weekly dates and all those different things. But now suddenly, when that last child leaves, you've got all that time together. And for us, I have to tell you, we did worry a little about that, because we'd had kids in our home for, I think I calculated, nearly 30 years. And so when that last one left, we were like, how will that be? Well, let me just tell you, it was awesome. It was awesome. I got Linda's attention again. I got her sympathy again. I got all those things she'd been devoting to the kids came to roost on me. I loved it.
But it didn't last very long, because all those kids, even though they're leaving home, still have problems, right? And so we still had to work through all those.
Yeah, but you used to tell me when I needed something or I was feeling a little needy, you would say, Rick, I have 9 children. I can't have 10. Buck up.
There were those days. That's absolutely true. But now, I mean, life never gets uncomplicated once you have children, because there are grandchildren. We now have 34 grandchildren. The oldest is 25, and the baby just is about to turn 2.
And the oldest one of those grandkids is about to make us great grandparents.
Right.
And I'm just going to ignore the old connotation of that and just say, what 2 words would you rather be described by than great and grand?
Right. And I don't know that how many are in that position right now. So we're going
well, we finally get them both. But so let us hasten to say, it's a great time if you make it a great time. Yeah. But we think it takes a lot of work. And
it does.
One of the things we've relied on a lot, especially since we became an empty nest couple, is we have a planning session every Sunday, and we call it a Sunday session. And we really, really work at helping each other to know what each of the others are thinking. Go ahead and say it, honey.
I was just wondering if you want to show them the pictures.
Yeah, I'm going to show you some pictures. We're going to show you some pictures. And then we're going to come back and finish that sentence that I sort of started a little earlier, but I'll just give you a preview to it. In parenting, the research shows that the better your marriage is, the better your parenting will be. Right. But it doesn't show that it always works the other way around. It doesn't show the better your parenting is, the better your marriage will be. Because what happens, so many people devote all their attention and mental energy to the parenting that they really don't work hard enough on their marriage. So we're always cautioning people, work on your marriage first, then on your parenting. And everyone uses the analogy, when the oxygen mask drops, put it on yourself first and then on your kids. But here's the breakthrough. What data is now showing is that with grandparenting, the harder you work on being proactive grandparents together as a couple, the better your marriage becomes. So the arrow goes the other way. if you work hard at being excellent, proactive, deliberate, intentional grandparents,
Yeah.
makes your marriage better.
And marriage partners, because we have changed the word from marriage to marriaging, because parenting, is such a huge word and we all know what that means. But marriaging means something a little bit different, as you know, those of you who are in this position, because, it can be really difficult. Marriaging is as hard a work as parenting.
So let us just show you just for a minute, a couple of things that'll kind of get us warmed up here today. We'll start the slideshow and just say basically that we like to say it this way: the symbiotic connection between grandparenting and empty nest marriage. If you do one well, you're going to do the other one better. You all know what happens to pictures if you keep them too long. They turn bright yellow. And there we are with our little children. And
first 4.
You probably
out in the forest.
You have a picture just like that probably somewhere of you with your young kids. And boy, does time pass fast. We'll just jump forward here ahead about 11 or 12 years, and that's the family.
So this is our first grandchild sitting there in the middle.
I guess we jumped ahead about 14 years, because there's that little first grandchild. And that was a pretty strong limb right there.
Yeah, and those kids get long fast. Look at that long kid, third from
with
the
those
left.
long legs. And then you just jump forward to just a couple more years, and now you're having marriages. And now there's lots of little grandkids in there. And you are really into this grandparenting role. And at that particular time, we still had a couple of our kids living at home, but we had 7 of them out there creating lives for themselves. And then you look at that one, and I always like to say, wow, that's sort of like, isn't it kind of like that picture?
Well,
I
it's
mean,
not
there we
yellow.
are again.
Well, it is kind of yellow, yeah.
Except that's our daughter. And so in just a matter of a few years, the child becomes the parent,
Yeah.
You become the grandparent, and that's it. And then, Linda, we get to the current day.
Right, but this is an old picture too, because
Even
we now
that.
have 54 of us in that picture, 56,
Yeah.
counting last year. So it happens so fast. You think people used to say that to me when all our kids were home. They said, oh, just enjoy every day because it goes so fast. And I think, oh, you can say that. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. How can you possibly say that? This is forever. And when I look back now, I think, they were right. It was absolutely true.
So we're going to come back and show you a couple more slides, just kind of as a table of contents, but we want to just talk generally for another minute or two about how important it is to be intentional and deliberate in this business of grandparenting. And again, we know this is a marriage institute and this is a marriage webinar, but keep in mind our premise all the way through: the better you do and the harder you work together on your grandparenting. And that's intuitive, isn't it? I mean, anytime you want to draw close to anyone, you work with them on a common goal. And in this case, the common goal is the well-being of our grandchildren.
Right.
Now, that's a sensitive subject because there's endless pitfalls. It's easy to become too proactive and step on the toes of your children and have them think you're interfering or you're critical of how they parent, or you're anxious to sort of retain power of some kind.
Right. Or step on the toes of your spouse, whether it's husband or wife, saying this is what we should do, and without really talking about it together. And I think we have found that the most useful thing we've ever done is to have a meeting every week with each other.
Yeah.
And so that we know what to expect, we know what's coming. We've talked through not only the schedule, but the problems, the issues, and so that we can talk together about it.
And you might say, wow, come on, you're together all the time. You just said your kids are gone.
Yeah.
Why do you need a meeting? Well, what we've learned, not only from ourselves, but from a lot of people we work with, if you don't schedule a time, boy, the weeks slip by, and then you fall into that defensive grandparenting where the only time you're really thinking about it, or the only time you're even thinking about your marriage, is when there's a crisis or a fire to put out,
Right.
So we call these our Sunday sessions, and we do other things. I mean, we plan our week together. Of course, many of you do that. We actually have a little feeling session where we tell each other what we're worried about and what we're,
How we're feeling.
how we're
we think about
feeling.
a lot of things.
but we
yeah.
always devote a portion of it to the grandkids. How are they doing? What don't we know? A lot of times we'll come up with, we'll think of one of the grandkids we haven't talked to for a while. Let's be sure and text him this week. Let's find out, did he make that team that he was trying out for? How did that test go? And it's this weekly meeting where we're realizing who needs to be contacted
You
that
know,
week.
when our kids were growing up, we had something called a 5-facet review.
Yeah.
And we reviewed, how is this child doing physically, socially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Those 5 things. Just spend a minute on it. Maybe we did that once a month. We just talked about it. And then when our kids left and we had empty nest, we thought, well, it took us a while to figure out that we still needed to do that.
Yeah,
We still
yeah.
needed to talk about our kids. And it's such a good thing to talk about together, because I am married to a problem solver. When
But I'm married to someone who knows what the problem is. That's my problem. If I understand the problem, I can solve it, but I
That's true.
rarely understand it until
That's
Linda explains to me
Mhm.
what's going on with this grandkid, or why that's a little tense with our relationship with a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law. I've never thought of that, but one of your gifts is being able to understand where the real problem lies.
Well, I don't know about that. But
Once you tell me that, I can work on it.
well, it's because they tell me,
Oh.
but it really is true that a lot of things can be happening and you not even knowing about it. And once you do know about it, then you can talk about it. You can do things. And sometimes it's hard if you're not always talking every day, but I mean, obviously we've got a lot of problems right now with our kids, and we're not going to go through those, but it really is so good to talk about it together. And what can we do to help?
Now, it's great if you've got a very intuitive, sort of emotionally intelligent wife like Linda, who pretty much knows what the issues are
Most
with a
women.
lot of your grandkids. Women often do. But where do you go if you're not so sure? Where do you go if you're thinking about it together, like we're suggesting? How's this grandchild doing? How's that one doing? And you find you just don't know enough to really know. Where do you get the information? Obviously from the parents. And so one of the things this is a little preview, we're going to give you some challenges as we draw to the conclusion in a few minutes, but a little kind of a preview of that is, have this kind of 5-facet review that Linda's talking about with your children who are the parents of those grandkids. If you live close enough to them, there's nothing. I just think we've recommended this to so many grandparents, and we've never heard anyone say that didn't work. I mean, sometimes it's better than others, but we've never heard anyone say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that." The idea of taking your children, one couple, your son or your daughter and their husband or wife, out to dinner, and asking that at that dinner you just focus on their kids, and doing the 5-facet review. How's Jim doing physically? And you're the parents, you're the stewards. We're just here to support. Tell us how Jim's doing physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually. Take them one at a time. Pull out a pen, take some notes on what you're learning about those
really
kids.
interesting.
And then when next time you talk together as a couple about those grandkids, not only do you know more about them, you also know which things the parents would like your help on and which things they'd like you to just beg off.
Right. And going back to the empty nest for just a minute, we found that once we were meeting alone with just each other, it was interesting to do a 5-facet review with each other.
Yeah.
Like, how are you doing? How are you doing physically? How are you feeling emotionally?
That's what I mean. Focusing on each other.
Just doing it with each other. And then one time, we should have done it more than one time, but we said, okay, I remember Richard saying, okay, you tell me, I'm going to write down what I think you need most, and you're going to write down what you think I need the most, and we're going to compare.
That was kind of a bad idea.
That was a great idea, because what he said was, because I'm married to a poet and he's just so always thinking about beautiful things. And he said, I think I just should write you a poem every day. And oh, how sweet that was. But guess what? I said, no, what I really need is for you to do the dishes. Just see what needs to be done.
This is a long time ago. This is This
Well,
is
that was one of
before.
our first.
I
empty
know,
nesters,
that's true. And we didn't really understand each other's, we'd been married for a long time, but
yeah.
we didn't fully understand each other's love language
Right.
near as well as we do
And
now.
that's important to talk about too.
Yeah,
But it's good to
absolutely.
carry that through with your children. And we still have 5 hazard reviews for our children. And then to go through it with the parents and their children, it's really useful.
Before we get to a little, kind of a little agenda on how to be a better, more proactive grandparent, again, with the thought that that's what'll improve your marriage, we probably ought to mention, we'll show you at the end today, our book on marriage. We've only done one book on marriage. We've done I think at last count 16 on parenting. In fact, our publisher one time said, why don't you, you've done all these parenting books, what about a marriage book? And I remember, this is a long time ago, and I
Yeah.
remember we're saying, hey, when we get marriage figured out, maybe we'll try to write a book on it.
You've probably never known anybody that had more arguments than we do. We do everything opposite. I mean,
We've turned it
think
into an art
so
form.
differently. We've turned it into an art form. Yes.
Well, we mainly turned it into an art form by me realizing I'm always going to lose anyway, so why? But we did do this book finally at the publisher's request, and even then we kind of chickened out a little. It's called The 8 Myths of Marriage. So it's really sort of on what not to believe and not to do in your marriage, because we know all those things.
Because we have made so many mistakes. We have.
So for example, there's the clone myth, which is that, oh, if we were only a little more alike, why can't you be a little more like me? And so on. And they're all kind of obvious things that we know deep down are not right, but we try to explode those myths and say, no. You want to be different. You want to learn from each other. We'll show you a little more about that.
And exploring that as empty nesters, I think is just so important, because there are some things you just have never had a chance to talk about because the kids are so overwhelming, So.
You just hit the nail on the head, Linda. We'd like all of you to think about this empty nest time as the start of a new phase of your relationship with each other. It's like a fresh beginning. It's like, hey, we fell in love with each other way back when. Let's fall in love again. Not that we've fallen out of love. We've stayed in love, hopefully, on that level, or tried to increase it, but we've had kids, we've had a busy life, we've had a career. We still have a lot of those things. We still have those stewardships, but we've got a little more time together now. Let's reinvent ourselves. Let's reinvent our relationship. Let's fall in love on a higher level now, even though you're more beautiful now than you were then. So,
But it is really exciting. It's a new adventure that I think we love each other a lot more than when the kids left.
Well, I know we do. Yes. I mean, those kids were siphoning off a little of our love. No, they still are. It is funny. We have had people not once, but many times say, when you have that many kids, doesn't it sort of dilute your love? I mean, you can only love each of them a little less, and that would be a misunderstanding of love, right? Because the more you love, the more you love.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it is true.
It just keeps multiplying. But I do have to say that everybody's not married to a spouse who's talkative and does want to go through this. So sometimes it's really tricky to figure that out. We have one of our kids is struggling because the husband just doesn't want to talk about a lot of stuff, and you have to work that out so that it works for both of you.
In fact, Linda, that is the perfect segue to where we want to go here next. So think about grandparenting101.com. Keep that in your mind, because we're going to send you there. That's going to be your homework for this class, is to go to www.grandparenting101.com, which is a little summary of this course we're doing now. It's a 6-month course, and every single module, there's 6 modules, and every one has a marriage component to it. Even though we're talking about grandparenting, it has a marriage component. We're aware, we had 1,000 people involved in the first season of Grandparenting 101. And we surveyed them, and about 82% were married. Now that leaves 18% who were either widows or widowers or divorced,
something,
but they were
yeah.
single grandparents, and we certainly welcome them to the course. But we told them at the beginning, there will always be a little on marriage within each of these modules. If you're a single grandparent, you can pay attention or not. It's up to you.
And some were just baby grandparents, they just had their first baby and they wanted to know, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And some had as many or more grandchildren than we do. And so we kind of try to cover the whole gamut.
Right. I like that term, baby grandparents.
What
does that make us?
Yeah.
We're adolescent grandparents.
Right.
No, we're probably
We're kind of middle-aged grandparents. Anyway.
So let us give you a quick overview. We'll each just say a little about each of these modules, and we're talking about grandparenting here, but in your mind, keep this thought going. If I were to do that, would it also improve my marriage? And I think you'll answer yes on every one. So the first module is on shifting our stewardships. And this is where we try to say, hey, we're no longer the stewards over these grandchildren. We never were. The parents are the stewards. I love that word, stewardship. They're the responsibility. And that's a great thing. You're a grandparent. You can give the support and have the fun, but ultimately you're not the one responsible. So that means have these regular meetings between generations 1 and 2, that is you and your children, about generation 3. And we give grandparents a questionnaire that they ask. It's about how many, 15, 20 questions that they ask, the grandparent asks the parent in order to determine, where would you appreciate my help with your children? Where would you not want my help? How should I offer it? The whole thing is to establish that the parents are the stewards.
And actually, it's a relief to both the parent and the grandparent. I mean, the grandparent and the parent, because sometimes we interfere with our children and we don't even realize we're interfering.
Right.
And if you ask them, I mean, it's a questionnaire that you can write things down. It's not offensive. It's just like, I need help on things when I ask.
Right.
Or I welcome your advice anytime. Or you're giving my child too many things and I can't deal with it, or
quit
whatever
giving
that
them
is.
money.
Yeah. And so they've found it really, really helpful. Yeah.
And I think, Linda, it's so important that happened not just once, but on a regular basis. And again, this 5 facet review, tell us more, help us to know your children better so we can help in a more intelligent way.
And it used to be that grandparents are saying, oh, I just can't even be in contact with my grandchildren because they live so far away. They live 500 miles away. Yeah. I can't be in touch with them. It is no more an excuse, because there are so many ways that you can contact your grandchildren. We have one in Switzerland. We have several in New York City, several in Hawaii, several in Phoenix, and we love FaceTime. We love
texting's the most reliable of all. Those teenagers they will text you back. They will not read your email, and they will not pick up their phone if you call them.
Right.
But they will text you back.
Depending on the age. I mean, the little ones obviously don't have phones. And so, but you can FaceTime with them. We were just facing somebody yesterday. It's just a miracle what we have now to work with.
And some of our best moments are, I will say to Linda, I got a text from Anna today. Oh, what did she say? And we talk about it. That's drawing us closer together as we help her. We got to hurry though, and we'll get through these. All we want to do is introduce you to each. Each of these modules lasts a month, by the way, in Grandparenting 101. We have a Zoom seminar that's a couple of hours long, where we brainstorm the principle, and then we have weekly bulletins that go out. And again, they're all mentioning marriage as well as grandparenting. Module 2, we call it the 3 C's, and it's the whole idea that the 3 things every grandparent ought to be, sort of in sequence. With little kids, be the cheerleader. As they get a little older, be their champion them in their causes, in their fondest dreams. And then hopefully when they're adolescents and a little older, you become their consultant.
Right. And we talk more about that as we go through the other things. Also, we ask people to develop a vision statement. what kind of grandparent do you want to be? And if you don't have grandchildren yet, you can do that for an empty nest. What kind of empty nest do we want to have? Just have a vision for it and then write it down. It's amazing what happens when you have that in your mind.
And imagine yourselves doing that as a couple. You are really drawing close together as you're hammering out together the kind of grandparents you want to be. And if you're the leader, if you're the grandma and you're way more involved than your husband, draw him into it if you possibly can, or vice versa, because if you're lucky enough to be a 2-grandparent family, you really will, there's synergy in working together. Now, module 3 is the most popular one among these 1,000 people that took the course the first time through. How do I develop these one-on-one relationships? And Linda's already mentioned texting and Marco Polo and any, you might be interested to know, I just thought of this, Linda, of the 1,000 grandparents who took the course that we just completed, 62% had a grandchild that lived more than 500 miles away. So we need electronics to stay in touch. And another questionnaire we do on module 3 is the questionnaire that you ask the grandkids, the things you can, the good questions you can put to them in one-on-one. This is the champion Grammy dates. You may say 34 grandkids. How do you do it? Linda finds a way to take them one-on-one, even if it's just for an hour.
I just had the most fun with a teenager who just got her college acceptance last week. And we just had a little bite to eat after school. And she told me so many cool things. I loved it. But actually, we have so many that we went to New York City this year. And we're only there for 72 hours, but we were determined to take all 10 grandchildren out on Grammy and grandfather dates. So, but individually, so we take 2 at a time. He went to one part of the restaurant. I went to the other. We talked to him for half an hour. Then we took notes on everything they said. We had questions for him, took notes. And then by the time we left, we knew those grandkids a lot better than we did before.
And here's the important thing. We each have a notebook. Actually, it's more than a notebook. It's a big blank book of paper. We call that the grandchildren's ledger. So every time we're asking them questions, we're writing down their answers, and they get a charge out of the fact that we're taking notes on what they say. And that will get them to talk more. And then I compare my notes with Linda's notes, and we're really getting proactive about that. We'll go through these others quickly because the point is really more your marriage. But we talk, module 4 is about smart support. There's a lot of really dumb support where grandparents are giving too much to their grandkids. It's causing entitlement and so on. We think there's a magic in matching funds. Your grandparents match what the children earn, and in some cases have a grandchildren.
For example, if they want to go to a camp in the summer or something and they can't really afford it, then we say, if you can raise half, then we'll come up with the other half. We've had grandchildren actually do PowerPoint presentations saying, I really want to do this. This is so important to me. We say, okay, sure, we'll match.
They're all going to get jobs as grant writers for,
right.
for money. So then module 5, the one that maybe most people tune into is faith and values. How do I communicate my faith and this is full of potential pitfalls where grandparents get too preachy and overstep their bounds. The parents can be upset at that. The kids can push the other way. So it's a sensitive one.
On the other hand, grandparents can teach values maybe easier than parents can, when you get into a courage discussion or honesty discussion. Anyway. So.
I didn't do a slide for it, but I'll just, for those of you that perk your ears up on that one, valuesparenting.com is our website where we have some stories that you can tell grandchildren that are never going to offend anyone, but they get you into a discussion about values. And then the last module, Linda's favorite, I think, right?
Being the trunk.
You're such a trunk.
I kind of resemble a trunk. It really is interesting that we are the trunk. Once you start having little grandchildren, we have our roots. We are who we are because of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. We are the trunk and our branches are our children. And it is so interesting to think of that in that context, because those branches are so important, but then they have their own branches, which are also more important.
And create an ancestor storybook. This is one of the simplest, easiest ideas. You know stories about your grandparents and about your great-grandparents. And if you put those stories in really simple language, they will become, I'll promise you, they'll become your grandchildren's favorite bedtime stories. They want to know. Do a family tree so they can say, this is the guy we're talking about. Here he is on this route. Here's our trunk. Here's you on the branch. You're 1/8 from this person. And here's a story about it.
Well, it is so important, and there's so much to say about that, but we hope that you'll join us if you are at that point in life when you need some grandparenting support, because we really have had so much fun with it.
So we're going to wrap up in a minute and get to your questions, but we thought you'd enjoy seeing, there's a real quick story about this. We've got about 2 minutes, maybe 3, then we'll go to questions. Oh, we got a little more. We got time to talk for a minute about the books. So we started out writing a book on grandparenting, and we were going to try to write it to grandmas and grandpas. And we had sort of a parting of the ways.
Well, it's so different being a grandmother and being a grandfather. It's just so different. And so I just had a lot to say that you would not say to, so we decided, okay, we got to just each do our own book.
Well, you wanted recipes in the book, and I thought, nah. And so Linda said, well, I'll write my own book then. And she did.
Well, but there are so many things to think about when you're a grandmother, and there are so many precious moments and things that you can really make a difference in a child's life. If you, I do Grammy camps in the summertime with them when they're here just for 4 days, and I grab 2 or 3 hours with them and do something really fun. And it's just a different role.
Easy to get that one on Amazon, Grandmothering. It's a big, thick book, I'll warn you.
It's not.
Compared
it has big
to
writing so that everybody can see it. I said, can you make this a little bit bigger in case people can't see?
Let's just say 5 of these books would fit in one of your books.
Yeah, I'll use this a little.
Because I decided, just using myself as a model, most grandpas, not all, we don't want to generalize here or stereotype, but we decided most grandfathers would like a bunch of bullet points, do this, this, and this,
Right.
And so this is a much simpler book, but I wanted to call it Being a Proactive Grandfather, How to Make a Difference. And so that's also on Amazon, and you granddads might find it interesting, just for ideas. We all need ideas. Nobody wants to rediscover the wheel. And then we did want to show you the marriage book, The 8 Myths of Marriage. And we won't tell you what too many of those myths are, other than you'll recognize all of them, the myths to avoid.
Well, I think we could just mention one, which is we were married by a man that we really loved, and he's passed away now, so I can say this, but he he gave us the worst advice when we got married. He said, don't ever go to sleep on an argument. Just work it out before you go.
How did he say it? Something like, never go to bed angry, or never let the sun set on a disagreement or something.
Yeah, but we got way past the sunset.
we got to the sunrise
All night sometimes, and we're exhausted. Oh my goodness. We were both digging in more and like, nope, I'm right. And I'm right about this. And I think actually that was the worst, because the best thing you can do when you get really heated and head to head and you can't come up with a resolution is leave each other. Go change your clothes, go do something different. And
take a break, take a little time out.
No. Do something to release yourself from being so wound up. I think that the sooner you can do it, the better. And then you'll start thinking, oh, now why would you think he thinks that? And well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe it's, oh, I bet it's because of this, because now you're thinking about how you can resolve it instead of making your point that you win.
Well, but in defense of the wonderful old gentleman that performed our marriage and gave us that flawed advice,
yes,
we just altered it a little bit, and it gets back to, this is kind of coming full circle. We started out talking about these Sunday meetings that we think, just 2-person meetings that we think are so important. So we altered this to say, never let the week end, not never let the sun set or never go to bed.
Right.
Never let the week end without making an attempt to resolve anything that came up during the week that still feels like it's not fully together. And so that's where we started having these little feeling sessions. And Linda's brilliant at this. Linda can have a real major criticism she wants to offer me. And in this setting on Sunday where we're calm and Linda will, what do you call it? The sandwich method?
Oh, yeah. When I got my feelings hurt during the week, I do the sandwich method. And that is, you start out, it's kind of Suzuki method too, if any of you are familiar with the violin method, where you start with a compliment, something you really appreciate about that person during the week. And then say, you should know though that my feelings were really hurt when we had that argument about this.
Or that you
This
did
is
a
the way
stupid
I
thing.
felt. Or yeah, you did a stupid thing. And so and he suddenly his heart is softening. And then I say, but I know you can do better. I mean, put some meat in the middle that really tells him how you feel, and then put the other piece of bread on the top and with a compliment, because I think that diffused a lot of really harsh feelings.
And these come up sometimes talking about the grandkids, I'll have a feeling that we should say something to someone. Linda's like, no, that's not what they need at all. And those are usually a good kind of arguments though, because
Right.
we're not personal. They're just debates about how we should do this. But there are still, no matter, please, if you're a marriage partner, if you're an empty nest marriage, and you are thinking that the way you should measure your marriage is by how seldom you ever disagree, as though the ultimate goal was merging into one person, cloning each other, where you think alike, don't wish for that, because A, it'll never happen, I don't think, and B, you wouldn't want it to. It's that bringing together of differences that really counts. In fact, we had a mentor. I should just pay brief tribute to two mentors, Stephen and Sandra Covey.
Right.
Sandra was a brilliant person as well as Stephen. We all know Stephen through 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and so many other books.
Yeah.
But I remember one time when we were very young in our marriage, and the Coveys were so generous with their time. And Stephen looked right at us one night across a dinner in a Chinese restaurant. I still remember right where we were sitting. And he said, Richard and Linda, I'm going to give you 2 sayings, and I want to know which one you believe in, because you can't believe in both in your marriage. And I said, okay. Linda said, okay. And he said, the first one is, some things are better left unsaid. And I'm kind of we were both kind of nodding our heads. Well, yeah, sure there. You don't want to say everything. And then he said, okay, the second one is, unexpressed feelings never die. They just get buried and come forth later in uglier forms. He said, now, which of those 2 are you going to live by in your marriage? And I think I said, well, both. I think both. He said, no, they're mutually exclusive. If you bottle something up and say, that's off limits, we're never going to talk about that. He said, that's great in a business relationship or with a friend or even your best friend, but not your spouse. That's where it'll come forth later in uglier forms. And he convinced us.
Well, he did, but there are caveats to that. I mean,
right.
Obviously there are things that you don't, when I say, do I look fat in this dress? You're not going to say yes, even if I do. But then that's silly, but it's what we mean.
I could say, well, it's not my favorite or something, right?
But there are
pick your time,
right,
and pick your battles.
And I think there are some things that are not resolved easily because it just takes some time to resolve it. But it is important to say how you feel and then talk about it. I just don't think it's not a magic bullet. There are lots of things involved with it.
Right. We want to get to your questions and your comments. let us just each wrap up. I'll give you the last word, honey, but I just want to say what a joy, what fun it is to be with. We wish you could see all your faces, but over 100 of you, some of you on as couples, we're just glad you're here. We're glad you're interested in improving your marriage. That's what the Marriage Institute's all about. We're glad that you want to tie grandparenting and marriage together that will benefit each other. I just want to make you that promise. And how much you benefit, it'll depend on how much work you put into it.
Right. And there are going to be some ups and downs in the empty nest parenting. But I think actually we are better off, I mean, as far as our relationship goes, because we have had more time to really be with each other. So we're glad you're thinking about this with us.
And again, join us on grandparenting101.com. That's the only thing we ask you to go on there, and we'll feel like we're still in touch with you.
Yeah, we'd love to have it.
Grandparenting 101.
It's 2 hours, just once a month.
Right.
And then we record it, so you don't have to be there a certain time or day, and then we can send it to you afterwards.
And with that, let's go to our good friend Alexis, who's going to pose some of your questions to us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for that presentation. I loved it. And just so you all know, I did put the link to grandparenting101.com into your chat. So please just go ahead and click on that so you can go and easily see it right after their presentation.
And Alexa, just one other thing, put one other link in there as long as you're doing it, valuesparenting.com, because that's those values stories that we mentioned, valuesparenting.com.
Perfect.
All right.
Look at that. She's just doing it.
Doing it right now.
Yeah. Just getting it in. So our first question is, someone was wondering if you could give an example of a vision statement from your third principle.
Great question. Most companies in business have a vision statement or a mission statement, and essentially it's an effort to condense your philosophy of your company or whatever it is into maybe just a little short paragraph. And so what we challenge grandparents to do is to start bigger. Start by listing the way you want your grandkids to view you, the things you want them to remember about you, and kind of make a little analysis of the kind of grandparent you want to be, and then say, how can we condense that down into just one little paragraph? And boy, we've seen some wonderful ones. I remember one essentially said, we want to, the shortest one, maybe a little too short, was, we want every one of our grandchildren to be absolutely convinced that they are our favorite. And that one is a little controversial, but you try to just pull it in. Another one said, no empty chairs. I want all my grandkids to be part of our family, and I don't want to judge any of them. And so again, I hate to give too many. That's an interesting thing, because you don't want anyone to copy anyone. You want to come up with this yourself.
Right. But I mean, most grandmothers want to leave a legacy.
Right.
I want my grandchildren to know what I love. I want them to know what means a lot to me. I want them to know that they mean a lot to me, and I'm willing to spend time with them. And so, you just think about it a lot and then condense it down, and it's just a really good process.
And this isn't something you share with your grandkids or with anyone. This is something you hold in your own heart that influences your behavior, because it's your vision of how you want to become.
And hopefully, if they read it at our funeral,
at your funeral,
they'll say, yep, they did that. All right. All right.
Good question. What's next?
Perfect. So since you were talking about grandmothering, Linda, and your perspective on it, somebody is wondering, one big takeaway from both of your grandfathering and your grandmothering books.
One big take out of 400 pages, Linda. What's the biggest page?
I think the big thing is love. I mean, they've got to know, and our grandkids, we've got 34 of them, and they've all gone their own direction. And some of them we have not loved as much as the other directions. But I think that absolute unconditional love, no matter what they decide to do, well, unless it's really bad, or illegal. We really want them to know that we support them 100%. And I think that we can do that easier than the parents can do that, because we are the cheerleaders. We love what they're doing. And it is just remarkable that instead of feeling like, am I being judged? They're feeling like, okay, I can even do better. So I think that's the most important thing, just unconditional love, no matter what.
And what I'd say to grandpas, and this, they both apply to both, but I'm especially interested in grandfathers who try to do a two-step process. And you'll see how the two steps go together. Number one, get insatiably interested in that grandchild, to where you've got this ledger and you're keeping track of what he says, and you know everything from what's his favorite color to what his favorite song is and what his favorite sport is and so on. And you want to know all about him. So number one is the interest. And then number two is converting that interest into a consulting relationship. And what I promise grandpas, if you'll show that interest in a grandchild, there will come a time, probably when that grandchild is an adolescent and begins making some serious decisions. Where am I going to go to college, or what kind of dating am I going to do? At what age am I going to do this or that or the other? If you've built that relationship of interest and trust, then you become a consultant to that grandchild, and he comes to you and says, Grandpa, of course I want my parents' advice, but you know, they're in charge of me and I kind of know what they're going to say. What do you think I should do about this? And you got to be careful you don't give advice that contradicts anything their parents have said, but you want them to come to you for advice, and you want to offer them not only your support, but your best wisdom.
I love that. Thank you so much. Someone else was wondering, they really loved your idea of having these Sunday meetings where you come together as a couple. And they were wondering why you decided to add a feelings moment into that.
Well, go ahead, honey. I think you can answer it better than I can. I've got a little comment at the end.
Well, I think that when we've had, there probably has never been a week that's gone by when we haven't had some feelings about, you know, why did you do it that way? Or, oh, I can't believe you, that's what you think, or whatever. And I think we just decided that we needed some time to talk about it. And so when it used to be, don't ever let the bury bad feelings, you know, I would just explode. And then I realized, well, I can wait until Sunday to talk about this. I mean, sometimes you can't, you have to say, this is not right, or this is not working. So I think that it's just been, it just happened itself, because your feelings is what you have to share more than anything.
And let me take it a step further, Alexa, and whoever asked the question. The feeling session is not only a part of our Sunday sessions, it is the heart of our Sunday sessions. The other stuff we do is almost perfunctory, like we go over our schedule and we do some planning and we ask what the biggest needs are that week, and we talk a little about our kids and about our grandkids. We talk about often investing or any kind of thing we're needing to do with our businesses or whatever.
Right.
But the heart of it is when we get to take a moment, we sometimes call it testifying, just because that's another way to say feelings, right? I want to tell Linda privately how I feel about her, how I feel about God, how I feel about life in general. And to some at first thought, that's like, come on, you're together all the time, you know that stuff. Remember that old adage, though, that used to be a mantra. I saw it on bumper strips that said, if you love them, tell them. And what you don't want to be is like the old story of Alf and Anna from the old country. And Anna says, Alf, you never tell me you love me. And Alf says, Anna, I told you that on the day we were married. If anything ever changes, you'll be the first to know. You don't want to fall into that. You want to have at least once a week a time when you really share your feelings.
And it's really not only just those things, but also I have a new idea. This is what I've learned this week.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's something I've learned about me, but a lot of times it's something stimulating and exciting that I've learned, and we have a chance to talk about it. And it's so hard when all the kids are home to do that, but it has really been so fun to share those on Sunday.
Final thought, it makes Sunday a better day too. I mean, Sunday ought to be, whether you're religious or not, Sunday is the first day of the week. And it ought to be the day that you think about the rest of the week. And it ought to be a special day. I mean, there is such a thing as a sabbatical. USU professors, every 7th year, you take a year off. I mean, there's a principle of the 7th day being the first day of the week. That's the time you make it a little different. You go a little deeper. You love a little bit more.
I love that. And on the topic of love, someone was asking and wondering how you discovered each other's love languages.
Well, you have to ask about it. I mean, what you don't want to do is assume, like I did a lot of years of our marriage. I'm like, well, why can't Linda see that? I'm rubbing her back. Surely she knows that that's the best way she can show me she loves me. And it was, but I was trying to impose my love language on her. And I didn't really want to acknowledge that her love language was that I should do the dishes. But I finally was able to realize that. And, you just have to be honest with yourself. And see, it's a funny thing. I'll just make this real brief, but there is a limitation on the golden rule. We all think do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It sounds like such a universal thing. That's really not quite the whole picture. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you assumes that the other person is the same as you. A better way to say it is do unto others as you perceive they would like you to do unto them. So you have to discover those love languages.
Yeah.
And if all else fails, ask them.
And, we're still working at it. I mean, nothing would make Richard happier than if I was massaging his hand while he was watching TV. And nothing would make me happier than to him see what needs to be done and just do it. But, everybody is so different. Our kids are married to different people, and it's so natural for some to do that and not for others. So but love language is really important.
And could I just say, don't any of you watching, this is a dangerous position to be in, because we're sitting here only telling you the good stuff. Don't any of you say, oh, it looks like those Eyres have just got this perfect marriage. We're fellow strugglers, folks.
We are.
We all just have to work at it in our own way. Don't beat yourself up if your marriage isn't perfect, because no one's is. Just work at it and learn what you can and share what you know.
Well, thank you all so much for joining, and thank you especially to the Eyres for coming on here and being able to share all of this insight. I really loved learning about it. I was telling the Eyres that I recently got married, and I bought their book, and I'm reading it with my husband. So we're doing the 8 Myths of Marriaging together. So I highly recommend their book. I haven't read the grandparenting one because I'm a little bit far away from grandparenting.
Put that on your shelf, Alexa, for about maybe 25 years from now.
Exactly.
Let me say, Alexa, how much we appreciate Utah State for sponsoring this. We actually started a class on parenting at Utah State at one point, and we love Utah State. We both are graduates. We love that place more than anything. Richard grew up just in the, in the shadow of the A, and we were engaged up in the A. I mean, in the tower. In the days when you could still get, in the days when you can still get up there.
Up in the balcony, if you look closely at Old Main, there's a little balcony right underneath the A, and we managed to get up there, and that's where I put this ring right here on Linda's finger, and it was either her say yes or I was going to jump off.
So we've had a wonderful love affair with not only each other, but Utah State for a long time. So we appreciate that they're doing this great thing on marriage.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of it. We really, really appreciate it. And we've had a lot of people who have sent in questions saying that they just really appreciate your presentation.
Well, let me just give one last thought then. If there are those of you who have questions and you haven't had time to get them answered, it's connected to the grandparenting thing, but there's an email address. We'd welcome any questions that any of you have. And it's just called Eyres Grandparenting 101@gmail.com. That's kind of long, isn't it? Eyres Grandparenting 101@gmail.com. No one else reads those but us, and we'd be happy to hear from you.
And I bet Alexis is putting that on the notes right now, so that
I am.
That's great.
All
Yeah,
right.
now you'll all have access to be able to send even more questions and get even more inside tips from Eyres. We're so grateful for you joining, and thank you everyone else for coming to this webinar. We're grateful for your questions and your participation. Just once again, if you are attending this webinar for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end of the webinar and the survey will automatically come up. Or you can email the UMC email for your survey to receive your certification. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, Alexis. Bye-bye.